Ursula from ursula-smith.com, and today I'm back with Yupo paper cutouts. And I played around with using them to imprint into polymer clay a while back, and I decided it's kind of flattish, so that the imprint is cool, but it's kind of flat, and so I was wondering if there was a way to make it a little more rounded, which of course I can't do by cutting out something on the silhouette. It's going to be flat, paper's flat. So what I'm going to try to do is use resin to go over the top of the cutout, and resin kind of rounds itself a little bit. It has this self-leveling property, and so I'm hoping I can get it, where especially if I do it in a couple of layers, that it will round, and then I can use that to imprint into clay. So anyway, we'll see how this experiment goes. Thanks for joining me, and here it comes. Hi, I'm back, and I have mixed up some two-part resin. It's the Ice Resin by Susan Lennart Casimir, and it's been stirred for a couple of minutes, and then I let it sit just to get most of the bubbles out. And so what I'm going to do now is transfer as carefully as I can some of this resin onto my cutouts. And I'm working on a silicone mat so that anything that drips will just peel right off. So this is going to take a little bit of time, and you're just going to go just a little bit at a time. I'm thinking I'm probably going to have to do a couple of coats of this just because it's such fine detailed work, and I don't want it to build up too quickly and roll off. So again, this will kind of self-level. And I'm just going to go around and basically just coat the whole thing. So I'm not going to make you watch me do this whole thing. But I did want to point out too that in addition, I mixed up enough that it will cover this, and then any left over, you can take cutouts, especially if they're colorful, and use this as a coating on top. And same thing, build up a layer, and you can make three-dimensional embellishments. So that's what I'm going to do with my leftover, and when it's cured, I will be back. Hi, I'm back, and so I wanted to show you that I've now covered everything, and it actually seems like it puffs up a little bit more on the paper cutouts, and I'm wondering if it's even going to stick on the Yupo. So we'll see what happens when it's finished. And then I just wrecked this because I moved my surface. So this was an experiment. I just stamped onto this silicone mat where the resin is not going to stick. And then over here I sprayed some Distress Oxide spray, and if you can see this area right here, just dropped one drop that I had left from the resin, and again, that should peel off. I did want to remind you to do this on a very flat surface, because if it's wonky, it will just kind of dry that way, so if it's on a slant, it will dry slanted. Hopefully this is flat enough, although it does seem like it may be moving a little bit, so this may be off kind of a little bit on a slant. And then make sure that you wipe all your products off. If it's silicone, it won't stick to it, so these little cups and this spoon over here are silicone, so when the resin cures, you can just peel it off. But things, like your toothpicks and even just regular plastic, it will dry, or it will cure to that item and then you'll never get it off. So there's good and bad to that point. So we're going to let it cure, and when it's finished, I will be back. Hi, I'm back, and so the resin has cured overnight, and I just wanted to show you, so these silicone stirrers, you can just peel off the resin. So these are really nice versus like the wooden sticks. Anyway, so you can get these on Amazon. But so here's my project. So here was, you know, the original thought. So again, this will peel up off of the silicone, and this is going to be really tricky to show. So that is one coat. So it's a little rounded, but I'm thinking I might want a second coat, and some of it actually kind of rolled off, so I'm probably going to have to get in there with a craft knife to clean it up a little bit so that I still have the design. I will show you why that happened. If you can see, this was not flat, so see how that ran. If you remember from the first thing, it was, you know, a round circle around the stamped image, and so clearly this is not a flat surface. I normally do this in another area where it is flat, but it's really hard to tape over there because it's not as bright as over here. So anyway, double check before you do this project, if you're going to try it yourself, that your surface is flat. Now this one, actually you can see rolled up much nicer. The other tip I will tell you is this first one that I did, when I came over it, I had stirred the resin as per the directions for like 2 to 3 minutes, and then used it right away. Well, I put it under a light just to get some of the bubbles out, but then I used it right away. And I've known this from my own experience, that if you leave it a little bit longer, it's a little bit thicker. And so especially when you're doing a project like this where you want that rounded look, it's better to let it sit. Of course, there's a fine line because then it can sit up too long. Although the ice resin doesn't set up super quickly, so I should have let it sit for a couple minutes. By the time I was done that first piece and got to this, it was right in that sweet spot. So you can see, hopefully, maybe not, but it's definitely a little more rounded, and that was the look that I was going for. So I'm not even sure I need to do a second coat on this. If I wanted a little bit, you know, more rounded, I could. And then even still, when you see the leaves, don't know if you can see the thickness there, but they're even got a little bit more thickness to them. And again, I just did this because I had leftover, and you know, I can add these as embellishments to cards or projects. So this was the mess where I stamped on the silicone and then poured the resin on top. So I've done this before, even just on, I don't know if you can see my setup, it's on like one of these craft sheets, and I've stamped on those lots of times and done the same thing, and you know, cured it and then lifted off, and you get the imprint of the stamped image. Usually it stays pretty well. You got to be a little bit careful that when you're stamping, because it's so slick. Oh, I forgot to mention, I used archival ink. You can use either StazOn or StazOn ink or archival ink, and these are meant to stamp on non-porous surfaces. And so that's just an easier ink to use on these slick surfaces, but you still have to be very careful that, you know, you press it down, press the stamp down, pick it right up so it doesn't smear. This smeared a little bit just because I was fiddling with it when I was first putting the resin down. But in general, that works really nicely as long as you do it on a flat surface. So just another way you can make your own embellishments. I can't find them now, but I actually have these rubber bands, and they come in, or now I'm showing my age here, but when my kids were little, so about 10 years ago, they used to make these silly bands, and they came in all kinds of shapes. But even, you know, if you can find rubber bands that hold their shape, that's a nice way to contain the resin. And so that you can put that around your stamped image, pour the resin within the rubber band. They were called silly bands, I believe. And then that contains the resin and stops it from, you know, smearing out. So then here is the resin with the, ooh, so here, this is curious. So this is the dye, Distress Oxide ink. Sorry, Distress Oxide ink, which is actually pigment. And so that really did not dry. The ink did not dry underneath the resin, even though the resin's cured. Now, I don't know if I let it sit, if it would eventually cure, but the ink did not dry underneath the resin. Now I have it all over my hand, so yay. And then here, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to pick this up. And it's the same thing with that little dot. So I'm gonna let that dry. I'm gonna try not to smear it. I'm gonna let it dry, and then I'll just post an update on my blog whether that Distress Oxide did dry or not on that cured resin piece. So anyway, here's all my experiments. Some of them good, some of them bad, some of them meh. Anyway, hope you like that experiment. Give it a shot. Let me know how it works. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Hi, I'm back, and I wanted to show you the difference between just using a flat cutout without the resin on top. So that's the result of just the Yupo paper cutout rolled into the polymer clay. You know, and it looks nice. It's got a good imprint, but you can see it's just kind of flat. Versus this one that I did with the resin on top, and again, I know it's really hard to see that it's got that little bit of rounding, but I'm hoping you can see it a little bit more here in the clay. So you can see instead of just kind of the flat imprint, it's got a little more rounding to it. So I think that'll look nice. I'm also going to work on a video where I use it in silicone, 2-part silicone molding putty, so that then I can have a mold of it as well. So once again, thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.